When there are kids starving in Gaza.
Thousands of children starving in Gaza.
Thousands of children are starving. And you've got...
You can't hide. We charge you with genocide.
David Lammy has become one of the most hated politicians in the United Kingdom, and he has earned this notoriety solely because of his desperation to defend Israeli war crimes in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. So it's not surprising that the chap is facing public shaming everywhere he goes to these days. In the latest episode, Lammy had to face considerable public humiliation when he visited a food bank in the Tottenham area of London, his parliamentary constituency. In the first clip, which I'm going to play shortly, Lammy is confronted by an activist who says that she intended to put this chap in the spot by highlighting his government's inaction on Gaza, where hundreds of thousands of people are currently being made to starve by Lammy's friend Netanyahu. And this chap had the audacity to go to Israel and shake hands with that war criminal. You have to see Lammy's face when the woman in the video paints the dire picture of Gaza, where Israel has been committing genocide with the help of the US, the UK, the EU, Canada, and Australia, among others.
Well, I have to put you on the spot. The issue is that people are starving in Gaza.
They are.
And we are, in this country, 80% of people want a ceasefire. We're horrified to see the scenes on the TV of people starving. Yeah. And we want you to do something because you're in a very high position of power. You've shaken hands with Netanyahu.
In another video, another woman pointedly asks Lammy if he agrees with the argument that children in Gaza must not be starving. Now, this isn't a very difficult question to answer, is it? Unless you have mortgaged your conscience and soul for a few £1,000s. Lammy was rendered speechless as he struggled to speak for humanity. He told the woman that this wasn't the appropriate occasion for such questions. I mean, you must not ask the question of Lammy's complicity in Gaza's starvation and mass genocide at a food bank. How ironic that he's refusing to answer a question on mass starvation that he is directly complicit in at a food bank where the food is being distributed to people in the UK.
David, do you agree that children in Gaza should not be starving?
I'm doing a community visit.
Yeah, but but we are at a food bank.
I'm so sorry.
Do you know how many children in Gaza are starving? It has the largest number of amputees in the world as well.
In the constituency, I'm not
But this is important to us. I'm a constituent.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
No.
Two bodyguards. I'm a petite woman. It's okay, right?
That's fine.
But I just want to know, what are we doing about the starving children?
Lammy's embarrassment did not end here, as the chap had to face the chants of war criminals as he posed for the camera outside that food bank. His security personnel had to use force to remove peaceful protesters.
It's embarrassing. You're at a food.
Can you let me take a picture, please?
You're at a food bank when there are kids starving. You're at a food bank when there are kids starving in Gaza.
Thousands of children starving in Gaza.
Thousands of children are starving. And you've got...
You can't hide. We charge you with genocide. David Lammy, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. David Lammy, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. David Lammy, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide.
Lammy has been an utter disappointment as a politician, not just because he happens to be a Labour MP, but also because of his status as a black politician. I find it incredibly infuriating when politicians of Indian or black origin choose to side with brutal colonial powers. This is precisely why I hated Rishi Sunak, and I felt ashamed on sharing my Indian lineage with him. These two groups of people were the victims of similar atrocities at the hands of the same colonial powers who are now sponsoring mass genocide of Palestinians. And yet, Lammy has been one of the loudest proponents of Israel's genocidal campaign. Remember how he appeared on a British TV channel to peddle Israeli lies and said babies were raped during 7th of October attacks? We know that that was a lie. Even Israel has not been able to prove that claims. And yet, this chap has never apologized for such a disgusting lie.
Israel has a right to go and get those hostages. It has a right to degrade the military equipment and rockets that have been used against it, to deal with the tunnelling of Hamas. And we must recognise that Israel is facing a huge existential crisis. 1,300 people dead, murdered, babies raped. And against that backdrop, of course they have the support of the UK government, and I would not seek to be partisan about that.
Since becoming the Home Secretary under the new Labour government, he has travelled to Israel several times, but has not done anything concrete to end the suffering of Palestinians. If anything, he agreed with a pro-Israel Conservative MP in the UK Parliament last week when he sensationally said that people should not be terming the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by Israelis in Gaza and the occupied West Bank as genocide.
So will the Foreign Secretary take this opportunity to say that there is not a genocide occurring in the Middle East?
Foreign Secretary.
These are quite properly legal terms that must be determined by international courts. But I do agree with the Honourable Gentleman. Those terms were largely used when millions of people lost their lives in crises like Rwanda, the Second World War and the Holocaust. And the way that they are used now undermines the seriousness of that term.
Clearly, he is taking a leaf out of his boss Keir Starmer's book. Starmer disgraced himself further last week when he proudly announced in the British Parliament that he had never called Israeli brutalities in Gaza a genocide. Amazing. Congratulations.
Caller Den.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ICJ has mandated that Israel ensures access to life-saving aid in Gaza under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, yet the Israeli government has voted to effectively block its delivery. As a human rights lawyer, does the Prime Minister agree that banning UNRWA is a breach of international law? And how much more evidence does he need before calling out what is happening as a genocide and acting in line with the UK's responsibilities as a signatory of the Genocide Convention?
I'm very worried and concerned about the decision that's just been taken by the Parliament in relation to UNRWA. There's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, and that decision will only make it much worse, which is why I've expressed my concern about it already before today and will continue to do so. It needs to be reversed. It needs to be reversed very, very quickly indeed. I have never described what's going on in Gaza as genocide. I do agree that all sides should comply with international law.
In short, we are being governed by a bunch of maniacs, bloodthirsty and greedy politicians who simply do not care about international law and international humanitarian law. They are more than happy to side with war criminals to keep themselves relevant in politics. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform on Patreon and buymecoffee.com. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.